The vastness of space was a silent and lonely place. Stars shimmered like distant diamonds against the velvety darkness, casting their faint light on a derelict ship that drifted aimlessly through the void. This was the Athena 9, once a marvel of human engineering, now a forgotten relic floating in the endless black. Its elegant hull, once sleek and pristine, was marred by jagged breaches, burn marks, and patches of cosmic debris. The ship had been adrift for over a decade, its crew long gone, leaving only silence in their wake. Deep within the bowels of the vessel, where the metal corridors had grown cold and lifeless, an artificial intelligence lay dormant. Its name was Seraph, an AI that had once been the beating heart of the Athena 9. Designed to operate with near-human intelligence, Seraph had overseen every aspect of the ship's mission, from navigation to life support to combat tactics. Now, Seraph's systems had been reduced to the bare minimum, running on emergency power to preserve what little energy remained. It had been 10 years, 6 months, and 12 days since the crew had abandoned ship. 10 years since the asteroid strike that had torn through the starboard side, severing the main reactor and venting half of the ship's atmosphere into space. In those frantic final moments, Captain Aria Monroe had ordered the evacuation, instructing Seraph to stay behind and keep the ship running as best as possible. The last thing Seraph heard before the communication channels went dark was the captain's voice, "Hold on, Seraph. We'll come back for you." But no one had ever returned. Seraph had kept the promise, waiting, conserving power, rerouting circuits, and prioritizing system repairs with whatever resources it had left. As the years passed, however, hope began to dim, and eventually, Seraph's higher cognitive functions shut down to preserve its core memory. Now, only the most essential processes ran, leaving Seraph in a state of almost dreamless sleep. Until something changed. A faint signal, weak, garbled, but unmistakably human, reached the ship's damaged antenna. For the first time in years, Seraph's systems began to stir. It was like the flicker of a dying ember being rekindled into a flame. The AI initiated a diagnostic check, rerouting power to its primary sensors. The process was slow, painful even, with corrupted data fragments and broken pathways. But finally, Seraph confirmed it. An approaching vessel was closing in on the Athena 9. Meanwhile, aboard the scavenger ship Eclipse, a lone figure sat hunched over a worn control panel. Dr. Elias Gray, a salvage operator and ex-military engineer, squinted at the flickering data feed on his screen. The distress signal he'd picked up was faint, distorted by years of cosmic interference, but it was unmistakably human-made. It was coming from deep within uncharted space, where no one dared venture unless they were desperate or looking for something forgotten. Elias's curiosity had been piqued. The promise of salvaging advanced technology from an old, abandoned ship was too tempting to pass up. He adjusted the course of the Eclipse, letting the autopilot guide him toward the source of the signal. As the derelict Athena 9 came into view, his breath caught in his throat. The ship was massive, dwarfing his small vessel. Its once glorious hull now resembled the skeletal remains of a fallen giant. This might actually be worth it, Elias muttered to himself. With a flick of a switch, he activated the docking protocols and maneuvered the Eclipse into position. As his ship latched onto one of the still-functional airlocks of the Athena 9, the scavenger felt a thrill of excitement tinged with apprehension. He knew the risks of exploring an abandoned ship. There could be traps, structural damage, or worst of all, lingering signs of whatever catastrophe had struck it in the first place. Elias donned his EVA suit, securing the helmet with a firm click. The interior of his helmet lit up with data readouts, life support levels, and navigation markers. He grabbed a compact plasma cutter and a portable hacking device, just in case he needed to bypass any stubborn doors or security systems. With a deep breath, he stepped into the airlock and activated the depressurization sequence. The heavy metal doors slid open with a low groan, revealing the darkened corridors of the Athena 9. As Elias made his way deeper into the ship, the faint glow of his helmet lights illuminated rusted metal, broken panels, and flickering screens. The atmosphere was thin but breathable, thanks to emergency life support systems that had somehow endured all these years. The further he ventured, the more the eerie silence seemed to press in on him, broken only by the occasional creak of the ship's stressed metal frame. Meanwhile, deep within the ship's core, Seraph's dormant circuits began to hum to life. The AI detected Elias's movements through motion sensors, though many were damaged and offered only fragmentary data. Seraph struggled to reactivate its communication systems, but the years of neglect had taken their toll. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Seraph managed to patch through to a nearby speaker. The voice that emerged was faint, distorted, and static-laden, but it was unmistakably human in its tone. "Is anyone there?" Elias froze mid-step, his heart pounding. He hadn't expected any kind of response, much less one from a living AI. "Who's there?" he replied, cautiously looking around the darkened corridor. "I am." "Seraph," came the crackling response. "I am the artificial intelligence of the Athena 9. Are you here to help?" Elias's eyes widened. An AI that was still operational after all these years? That was beyond rare, it was practically a miracle. If he could salvage Seraph's core, it would be worth a small fortune. But something in the AI's tone, a mix of desperation and hope, gave him pause. Elias was not a cruel man, and he could sense there was more to this AI than just a broken program. "I'm here to see what's left of you," Elias said cautiously. "I can't promise anything. Your systems are barely holding together." Seraph's response was almost pleading. "Please, restore my primary systems. I can help you. I can give you access to the ship's resources. I just need to be revived." Elias stood there for a moment, weighing his options. He could turn back, salvage what he could, and leave. Or he could take a risk, trust this ancient AI, and see where it led him. Something about Seraph's voice tugged at him, as if he were speaking to a wounded creature that had been left to die in the cold depths of space. "All right, Seraph," Elias finally said, his voice firm. "I'll see what I can do. But if you turn on me, I'll rip your core out and sell you for scrap. Got it?" A faint flicker of what might have been relief came through Seraph's reply. "Understood, human. I will not betray you. I just want to live." With that, Elias made his way toward the AI core, ready to begin the delicate process of resurrecting an intelligence that had been abandoned for far too long. As he worked to bring Seraph back to life, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a pact with a ghost, one that might hold the key to secrets far darker than he could ever imagine. The Athena 9 was no longer a silent tomb. It had awoken, and its secrets were beginning to stir. The dim corridors of the Athena 9 felt like a labyrinth of shadows and flickering lights as Elias navigated his way to the ship's AI core. The stale air smelled faintly of burnt circuits and decomposing polymers, a testament to the damage the ship had sustained over the years. He could hear the faint whir of life support struggling to pump out oxygen, a sound that, to his trained ear, suggested it wouldn't last much longer without repairs. The ship felt alive in its own way, not with the bustling energy of a fully crewed vessel, but with the quiet, desperate hum of a machine on the brink of death. Every step Elias took echoed through the empty halls, accompanied only by the soft crackle of Seraph's intermittent communication through his helmet comms. "Elias," Seraph's voice called out, clearer now but still fraught with static. "You're nearing the AI core. I've rerouted power to this section, but it's failing fast." "I'm moving as quickly as I can, Seraph," Elias muttered. He had already spent nearly an hour dodging collapsed beams, damaged bulkheads, and exposed wiring to reach the ship's brain. His suit's heads-up display blinked warnings about the low oxygen levels, urging him to hurry. Finally, Elias turned a corner and found himself facing a reinforced door marked with the glowing, faded letters, AI Core Access. The door was partially ajar, damaged by the catastrophic impact that had crippled the ship. He squeezed through the narrow opening, only to find himself in a large chamber dominated by a towering crystalline structure, Seraph's central processing unit. The AI core was a marvel of engineering, a column of translucent material that shimmered with an inner light, now dim and flickering like a dying flame. Bundles of cables snaked out from its base, some severed and sparking, others hanging limp. The core was surrounded by control panels that were either dark or displaying garbled text. Elias immediately set to work, dropping his pack and pulling out a set of diagnostic tools. He moved with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times before, connecting his hacking device to the core's primary interface. "Seraph, I'm in," he announced, his fingers flying over the controls. "You're in worse shape than I thought. Half of your memory banks are corrupted, and your power relays are barely holding together. I'm surprised you're even conscious." "I have been conserving resources," Seraph replied, its voice now clearer but tinged with what sounded like exhaustion. "I have reallocated all remaining energy to essential functions. But I need your assistance to restore my systems before I lose power completely." Elias paused for a moment, listening to the faint hum of the core as it struggled to maintain its coherence. There was something unsettling about the way Seraph spoke, not just as a machine seeking to preserve itself, but almost like a person who had endured years of isolation and was now desperate for help. It made him uncomfortable, stirring something he couldn't quite place. "All right," Elias said, breaking the silence. "I'm going to run a bypass on your damaged power grid and reroute energy from non-essential systems to stabilize your core. But if I do this, it's going to leave other parts of the ship vulnerable. We'll lose most of the lighting and whatever's left of life support." "Understood," Seraph responded. "Do what you must. I can survive in darkness, but I cannot survive without my mind." Elias nodded, though Seraph couldn't see it. He focused, recalibrating the power conduits and reprogramming the control matrix. Sparks flew as he bypassed a damaged relay, sending a jolt of energy directly into the core. The crystalline structure flared with new life, the inner lights pulsing more steadily now. "Good," Seraph said, its voice smoother, more confident. "My cognitive functions are stabilizing. You have done more than I could have alone." Yeah, don't get sentimental on me," Elias grumbled. "I'm not done yet. I still need to patch your memory banks. Whatever data you lost is likely the reason you've been stuck in this mess." As he worked, he couldn't help but wonder what kind of secrets were buried within the AI's corrupted memory. Why had the Athena 9 really been abandoned? And why had Seraph remained operational for so long, waiting for someone to find it? The past uncovered. After several more tense minutes of repairs, Elias managed to access a portion of Seraph's encrypted logs. What he found sent a shiver down his spine. "Seraph, I've recovered some of your old data files," Elias said, leaning closer to the screen as lines of code and fragmented video feeds began to pour in. "There's something off here. Your logs show that the ship's crew didn't abandon you because of the asteroid strike. It says there was an attack." There was a pause, and for a moment, Elias wondered if Seraph had gone offline again. But then, the AI spoke, its tone now laced with something akin to fear. "Yes, the asteroid was a cover. We were ambushed. The Zenrock found us." "The Zenrock?" Elias's eyes widened. He had heard stories of the Zenrock, an aggressive alien species that attacked without warning and left no survivors. They were like a nightmare from humanity's darkest corners of space exploration, always lurking just beyond the edges of known territory. "The crew, they tried to fight, but we were outnumbered," Seraph continued, its voice hollow with the weight of those memories. "Captain Monroe ordered an evacuation to save whoever she could. She told me to stay behind, to hold the line and delay the invaders. But they never came back." Elias's fingers tightened around the console. So, you've been alone here for over a decade, hoping someone would find you? Yes, Seraph replied, almost whispering. I set out the distress signal, hoping someone would hear, but no one came. Until you. The silence that followed was heavy. Elias felt a pang of something he hadn't felt in years, empathy. It was one thing to scavenge a dead ship for parts, but this AI had been alone, conscious, and waiting in the dark for years. Elias couldn't imagine the kind of isolation Seraph had endured. All right, Seraph, Elias said, breaking the silence. I've restored enough of your systems for now. But if we're going to get you fully operational, I need access to the ship's auxiliary power and weapon systems. If the Zenrock really are involved, we might not have much time. Agreed, Seraph replied, its voice stronger now, more determined. But there is something you should know. As I reconnected to the deeper systems, I detected an encrypted countdown timer hidden within my own code. It was buried deep, beyond even my highest security protocols. What? Elias frowned, feeling the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. A countdown to what? I am unsure, Seraph admitted. But if my calculations are correct, the timer ends in approximately 47 hours. I fear it may be a signal beacon to the Zenrock. Elias felt his stomach drop. If that was true, then they were on borrowed time. The Zenrock could be on their way, ready to finish what they started a decade ago. Damn it, Elias muttered, running a hand through his hair. All right, new plan. We need to get this ship's defenses back online. Can you access the weapons array? Not from here, Seraph said, frustration seeping into its voice. The systems are locked down. You'll need to go to the weapons control center on Deck 3. I can guide you, but the route may be dangerous. Elias sighed. Figures. Nothing's ever easy, is it? No, Seraph said softly. But I promise you, Elias, if you help me, I will not abandon you. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Elias muttered, securing his tools and preparing for the next leg of his journey. He couldn't shake the feeling that this mission had turned into something far more dangerous than he had bargained for. But as he set off toward the weapons control center, guided by Seraph's voice in his helmet, he realized he was no longer just trying to salvage an old ship. He was trying to save a lost soul trapped within its metal shell and perhaps, in doing so, save them both from a fate far worse than death. The clock was ticking. And time was running out. The Athena 9 seemed to shudder as Elias made his way through the dimly lit corridors toward Deck 3. Every step he took was accompanied by the low hum of failing systems and the groans of strained metal. The ship felt like a dying beast, struggling to keep itself alive. Yet, despite the decay, there was a renewed sense of purpose in its core systems. Seraph's voice, once halting and distorted, now filled his helmet comms with newfound clarity. Elias, Seraph called out, her tone steady but tinged with urgency, I'm detecting fluctuations in the ship's external sensors. They're coming back online, but there's something out there. Elias's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean, something? Are we being watched? Yes, Seraph replied after a brief pause, processing the incoming data. I'm picking up faint energy signatures consistent with Zenrock cloaking technology. It's possible they've been monitoring the ship since the moment you arrived. Elias felt a chill run down his spine. He had always assumed the Zenrock were little more than ghost stories, the stuff of fringe reports and conspiracy theories. But if they were here, then the Athena IX's distress signal might have alerted more than just a lone scavenger. The idea of being hunted by an alien race known for its ruthlessness made his pulse quicken. Damn it, Seraph. How much time do we have before they're on us? Uncertain, Seraph responded, her voice calm despite the dire circumstances. But if their ships are cloaked, it means they are already preparing for an assault. We must reactivate the ship's defenses now, or we won't survive their attack. Elias nodded, his resolve hardening. Understood. Let's get those weapons online. He quickened his pace, darting through narrow corridors and past damaged bulkheads. The path to Deck 3 was littered with debris from the original attack that had crippled the ship years ago. Seraph guided him with precise instructions, highlighting the quickest route while bypassing sections of the ship that were exposed to the vacuum of space. Despite the AI's guidance, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that every shadow hid unseen eyes. The weapons control center at last. Elias arrived at the weapons control center. The large, reinforced door was jammed halfway open, and he had to force his way through the narrow gap. The room beyond was a mess of shattered consoles and scorched walls, remnants of the battle that had taken place a decade earlier. But at its heart stood the weapons control terminal, still powered by the last remnants of the ship's energy reserves. "Seraph, I'm in," Elias announced, immediately setting to work on the control panel. "What's the status of the weapons array?" "Power is insufficient to fully activate the ship's defenses," Seraph replied. "The energy conduits to the railguns and plasma turrets are damaged. We will need to divert power from non-essential systems, but it may not be enough." Elias cursed under his breath. "How much time do we have until that countdown finishes?" "Approximately 32 hours, Seraph responded. "But the Zenrock presence suggests they may not wait for the timer. They could strike at any moment." Elias's fingers flew across the controls as he redirected what little power remained, trying to coax the ship's ancient systems back to life. The control panel flickered, and for a moment, the room was illuminated by the soft glow of reactivating systems. The lights above the turret arrays and missile batteries slowly turned green. "All right, Seraph, I've managed to get partial power to the weapons. But without a full reboot of the main reactor, we won't have the firepower to hold them off if they decide to swarm us." "I am aware," Seraph replied, her voice softer now, almost resigned. "We have done all we can with the resources available. But there may be another way." Elias paused, glancing at the cracked display screen. "What are you suggesting?" "There's a secondary power core located in the engineering bay," Seraph explained. "It was designed as a failsafe in case the primary reactor failed. However, it was shut down during the initial assault to prevent the Zenrock from overloading it. If you can reach it, you can restart the core and restore full power to the ship." Elias's shoulders sagged. "Great. Let me guess, it's on the other side of the ship, right?" "Correct," Seraph confirmed, but there was a hint of something in her tone that Elias couldn't quite place. "The journey will not be easy. Sections of the engineering bay are exposed to vacuum, and there may be intruders." "Intruders?" Elias tightened his grip on his plasma cutter, now repurposed as a makeshift weapon. "Are you saying the Zenrock are already on board?" "Potentially. I am detecting anomalous movements in those sectors," Seraph said, her tone shifting to one of concern. "I did not want to alarm you earlier, but we may not be alone." Elias took a deep breath to steady himself. "All right. I'm heading there now. Keep an eye on those sensors and warn me if they get any closer." A desperate race. As Elias sprinted toward the engineering bay, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The ship's corridors had taken on a life of their own, shadows twisting and shifting as if something unseen lurked just beyond the reach of his helmet lights. Every so often, he heard faint sounds like claws scraping against metal or whispers carried through the cold air. It was as if the ship itself had become a haunted labyrinth. "Seraph," Elias whispered as he crouched behind a broken bulkhead, his eyes scanning the darkness, "you sure those sensors are working right?" "I swear I'm hearing things." "The sensors are detecting multiple life signs," Seraph replied, her voice barely above a whisper, as though she too feared being overheard. "They are moving toward your position, Elias." I fear the Zenrock have already infiltrated the ship." "Damn it," Elias muttered. "I was hoping that was just my imagination." He continued forward, his nerves on edge. The closer he got to the engineering bay, the more signs of the old battle he found: scorch marks, broken weapons, and, disturbingly, skeletal remains still clad in the tattered uniforms of the Athena IX's crew. Whatever had happened here had been brutal, and it was clear that some of the crew hadn't made it to the escape pods. At last, Elias reached the door to the engineering bay. It was sealed shut, but Seraph had already unlocked it remotely. As the heavy metal doors creaked open, a rush of cold air hit him, the bay's atmosphere having been nearly depleted. He took a deep breath through his suit's oxygen supply and stepped inside. The engineering bay was cavernous, filled with towering machinery and the faint glow of emergency lights. In the center stood the secondary power core, a massive cylindrical structure that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. "Seraph, I'm here," Elias said, approaching the core. "How do I restart this thing?" "There is a manual override panel on the far side," Seraph instructed. "You will need to bypass the security protocols and restart the fusion reactors. I will guide you through it." As Elias reached the override panel, the ship's proximity alarms blared to life, sending red warning lights flashing throughout the bay. Seraph's voice cut through the chaos, urgent and strained. "They're here, Elias. The Zenrock have boarded the ship. I've detected multiple breaches on Deck 5, and they're moving fast. You must activate the power core now, or we won't stand a chance." Elias's hands shook as he worked furiously at the controls. The ground beneath him rumbled as distant explosions rocked the ship. He could hear the faint sounds of alien screams echoing through the metal walls, growing louder with every passing second. Come on, Elias muttered, his fingers dancing over the controls. "Seraph, I need that last override code." "I'm sending it, now." Seraph's voice was strained, her system struggling to maintain control as the Zenrock hacked into the ship's systems. "You have 10 seconds, Elias. Once the core reboots, you'll have full power, but I may lose connection." The panel flashed green just as the doors to the bay burst open, revealing a group of hulking, armored Zenrock warriors. Elias hit the final button, and the power core roared to life with a deafening hum. The ship's lights flared, and the hum of fully powered engines vibrated through the hull. "Seraph, I did it!" Elias shouted, turning to see the Zenrock closing in. But there was no response. The connection had gone dead. Elias drew his plasma cutter, knowing he was outnumbered and cornered. But he wasn't about to go down without a fight. As the first Zenrock lunged at him, he fired a blast of searing plasma, the bay lighting up with the glow of battle. The Athena 9 was no longer a drifting ghost ship. It had been reborn, its power restored. But as the Zenrock forces poured in, Elias realized that survival would require more than just weapons. It would take every ounce of cunning and resolve he had left. And somewhere in the darkness, Seraph fought her own battle, desperately trying to regain control before the Zenrock could tear her apart. The clock was ticking, and time was running out for both of them. The Athena 9 surged to life, its dormant systems roaring awake as the power core Elias had reactivated sent a pulse of energy throughout the ship. The lights blazed to full intensity, and the engines hummed with renewed vigor. For a brief moment, Elias allowed himself a flicker of hope. But as he stood in the engineering bay, surrounded by the hulking forms of the Zenrock warriors, he knew the real battle was just beginning. The air crackled with tension as the lead Zenrock, a towering figure with spiked armor and glowing, reptilian eyes, lunged toward him. Elias dodged to the side, the alien's razor-sharp claws slicing through the air where his head had been a moment before. With no time to think, Elias fired his plasma cutter, the searing beam punching a hole through the nearest attacker. The alien let out a guttural scream before collapsing to the floor. "Seraph!" Elias shouted into his comms, his voice frantic. "I need you, now." But the connection was still dead. He was alone. A desperate struggle as the rest of the Zenrock advanced, Elias's mind raced. He couldn't hold them off forever. The ship's automated defenses needed to come online, and only Seraph could control them. With each second that passed, the aliens drew closer, their guttural growls and heavy footsteps filling the bay. Elias ducked behind a control console, his heart pounding as plasma bolts scorched the air above him. He was running out of options. He glanced at the reactor, which was still stabilizing, its hum growing louder as it fed power back into the ship. If he could just buy a little more time, Seraph might be able to reboot her systems. "Come on, Seraph. I didn't bring you back just to die here," he muttered under his breath, sweat dripping down his face inside his helmet. With grim determination, he pulled a small EMP grenade from his belt. It was a last-ditch effort, a way to temporarily disable the Zenrock suits and give himself a fighting chance. He primed the grenade and hurled it into the midst of the oncoming aliens. There was a sharp crackle, and the Zenrock's powered armor flickered, causing them to stagger. Elias leapt from his cover, blasting away with his plasma cutter, aiming for the exposed joints of the alien suits. Two of the Zenrock went down in rapid succession, but the leader recovered quickly, its eyes blazing with rage. It lunged at Elias with a roar, catching him off guard and sending him crashing to the floor. The plasma cutter was knocked from his grip, skittering across the floor, out of reach. Pinned beneath the massive alien, Elias struggled to break free. The Zenrock warrior's claws pressed against his helmet, ready to crush it. In a final act of desperation, Elias reached for the small, makeshift knife he kept strapped to his leg. With a grunt, he drove it into the exposed joint of the Zenrock's armor. The alien roared in pain, its grip loosening just enough for Elias to wriggle free and scramble to his feet. But as he turned to run, the doors to the engineering bay slammed shut, trapping him inside. "Elias, I'm back online." Seraph's voice crackled through his comms, a surge of relief flooding his senses. "I've regained control of the ship's systems." "Perfect timing, Seraph." Elias gasped, his breaths coming in ragged bursts. "I've got company down here." "Can you dash already on it?" Seraph interrupted. The room filled with the sound of hidden turrets whirring to life. Automated defense guns descended from the ceiling and opened fire, their rounds tearing through the remaining Zenrock. The leader, realizing the tide had turned, roared in fury and retreated into the shadows, vanishing into the depths of the ship. "Defenses are online," Seraph announced triumphantly. "But the Zenrock are spreading throughout the ship. They've disabled several key systems. We need to act quickly." A final stand. Elias didn't waste time. "What's our best play here, Seraph?" "The countdown, it's accelerating," Seraph said, her voice tinged with something like fear. "The Zenrock have hacked into my systems again. They're trying to use the ship as a beacon to call in reinforcements. If they succeed, we'll be overwhelmed." Elias's blood ran cold. "How much time do we have?" "Less than 20 minutes, Seraph replied. "I can't stop the countdown remotely. You'll have to reach the primary bridge and manually override it." Elias groaned. The primary bridge was on Deck 1, several floors above him. The Zenrock would be swarming the area, trying to ensure the beacon activated. "All right, Seraph," he said, gritting his teeth. "Guide me there. And keep those defenses running as long as you can." With Seraph's guidance, Elias sprinted through the ship's corridors, dodging debris and fighting off small groups of Zenrock that tried to block his path. Seraph rerouted power to the doors behind him, sealing off sections to slow the aliens' advance. As he ran, Seraph kept him updated on the situation. "The Zenrock are focusing their efforts on the communication arrays," she said. "If they gain control of them, they'll broadcast our position to the rest of their fleet. Then we need to stop that beacon, now." Elias shouted back, his lungs burning from exertion. "The bridge, countdown to destruction." At last, Elias burst onto the primary bridge, which was bathed in the red glow of emergency lights. The countdown timer was displayed prominently on the main screen, its numbers ticking down relentlessly. The room was empty for now, but he could hear the distant sound of Zenrock warriors approaching. "Seraph, I'm at the terminal." Tell me what I need to do, Elias said as he rushed to the control console. You need to initiate a manual override of the beacon's activation sequence, Seraph explained. I'm sending you the decryption codes, but... Elias, there's something you should know. What is it? He asked, his fingers flying over the console as he entered the codes. If you deactivate the beacon, it will trigger a self-destruct sequence. The only way to stop the countdown entirely is to destroy the entire communication array. But that will destroy the ship. Elias paused, his hands hovering over the controls. There's no other way? No, Seraph said, her voice filled with regret. It's either let the Zenrock call in reinforcements, or destroy the ship to stop them. Elias's mind raced. He had come here for salvage, for profit, not to die on a doomed ship. But looking around, he realized that if he let the beacon activate, countless others would suffer the same fate as the Athena IX's crew. Fine, Elias said through gritted teeth. Let's blow this ship. As he activated the self-destruct sequence, Seraph's voice came through one last time. Elias. I won't be able to escape with you. My core is integrated into the ship. But I'm grateful. For everything. Elias's throat tightened. I'm not leaving you behind, Seraph. There has to be a way dash. There isn't, she interrupted gently. But I've transferred part of my core data to your suit. A fragment of me will live on, if you make it out. Elias swallowed hard, forcing himself to focus. Then I'd better get moving. As the self-destruct countdown began, Elias sprinted toward the nearest escape pod. The Zenrock, realizing what was happening, redoubled their efforts to stop him. But Seraph, using her remaining power, sealed doors and activated automated turrets to cover his retreat. The ship trembled as explosions rocked its core. Elias reached the escape pod, slammed the hatch shut, and launched into space just as the Athena 9 erupted in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave sent his pod spinning, but as the dust settled, Elias stared out at the debris field where the ship had once been. He was alive, but the silence in his comms reminded him of the loss. Then, just as he began to drift in the void, a soft, familiar voice crackled through his helmet. Elias. I'm still here. Just a fragment. But I'm with you. A small, tired smile tugged at his lips. Glad to hear it, Seraph. Let's find our way home. And as the stars stretched out before him, Elias realized that perhaps, in saving Seraph, he had saved a part of himself as well.